We begin today the Gemara on the bottom of Chavav Amud Beis. So the Gemara, 2 lines from the bottom. Amar Rav Papi Mishmei de Rava. This is the Girsa here. He said in the name of Rava as follows. We're speaking here about selling a shul or other holy items. What happens? So he says, Mi beik knishta lebei rabbanon. If you sell a beik knishta, which is a beis hakneses that's designated specifically for davening, and you want to use the money to buy a place to make it a beis hamedrish, which is a place where people are learning exclusively. So that, he says, is allowed because you're going up a level. But in the reverse, if you sell a shul or place which is made for a beis medrash learning, and you want to buy from that money a place for davening, that's not allowed because you're going down a level. Rav Papa mishmei de Rava, but Rav Papa said in the name of Rav Masni Yipche, he said the exact opposite. That if you're selling a place that's made for learning, a beis medrash, and you're buying from that a beis hakneses for davening, that's going up a level. So Rav Ache said regarding this argument, Kvasei de Rav Papi mistavra. It's logical, or we follow the opinion of Rav Papi. The Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, because Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, Beis HaKnesses mutar l'saisei Beis HaMedrash. So we see that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, like his opinion, that you can take a Beis HaKnesses and you sell it, and the money you use to make a Beis HaMedrash. Shema Mina, from here we see that we paskin like this opinion. But here the Gemara is actually going to bring an argument about this, that Rabbi Yochanan argued on Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Bar Kapara darshan regarding the pasuk here, the pasuk when it speaks about the churban of the Beis HaMikdash, it says as follows: Vayisrav ves Beis Hashem, he burnt the Eibishter's house, ves Beis HaMelech, and the house of the king, ves Kolbat Yerushalayim, and all of the houses in Yerushalayim, ves Kolbayis Gadol Sarav Be'esh, and all the great places, all the great houses he burnt in fire. So what are all these places the pasuk is talking about? Beis Hashem ze Beis HaMikdash. Beis HaMelech, Elu Palter and Shamelech, those were the palaces of the kings in Yerushalayim. There's Kolbat Yerushalayim Kemashmon, the houses in Yerushalayim, like it means literally, he burnt the houses of Yerushalayim. What is Veskolbayis Gadol Saraf Be'esh mean? That the big houses he burnt in fire. So Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi argued about what's called a Bayis Gadol. Chad Omar, one of them said, Makom Shem Megadlim Beit Torah. This refers to a place where you raise Torah there, where people learn Torah. Another opinion is that this refers to a place where you daven there. So this is what we were talking about, the Beis HaMedrash or the Beis HaKnesses. The one that says that a place where you learn Torah is called a Bayis Gadol, this term of Gadol, of great. Hashem Chafetz Laman Tzidkai, Yagdil Torah v'Yadeh. So we see regarding Torah, it uses the term Yagdil Torah, the term of greatness. The one that says that a place of greatness, a house of Gadol, is tefillah. Chsiv saprano agdeilis, relate the greatness Asha Elisha, which Elisha did, and the Elisha David barachmu David, and the greatness, the great things Elisha did was through davening. So we see that davening is greatness. So this is the machlokes between Rabbi Yeshua and Ben Levi and Rabbi Yochanan. So the Gemara now concludes this. Tistayim, I'll prove to you that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Yudama makom shebegadlum by Torah. That when it says Gadol, he was the one that says that it refers to a Beis Medrash where they learn Torah. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, as we said before, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is the one that said Beis HaKnesses mutar l'saisei Beis HaMedrash, that a Beis HaKnesses could be turned into a Beis HaMedrash. Shema Mina, so I see that according to his opinion, a Beis HaMedrash is going a level up. So that's the real greatness, and that's what the pasuk was talking about there when it said Bayis Gadol. It said in the Mishnah, Avol machru Torah la yikchu sfarim, that if you sell a Torah, you shouldn't go down a level and use that for Sfarim. So the question was asked, are you allowed to sell an old Sefer Torah because you want to buy a new Sefer Torah with it? So you're not going up a level, but you're not going down a level either. And what's the reason? L'chayre from the Mishnah. So the Rishonim say from the Mishnah, you see that it's not enough to buy the same. You always have to go up a level. Why would I think here regarding a Sefer Torah that it should be any different, that you could buy the same, another Sefer Torah?
It's upper quality.
Well, he's going to obviously buy a Sefer Torah that's of better quality than the older one, but as far as the holiness is concerned, they're both a Sefer Torah. They're not on a different level of holiness. So the Gemara is, should I say, Kivin the Mailile, since he's not going up a level, Asr. So it's forbidden. Or maybe here Sefer Torah is different. Kivin the Leke Leiluye Loyachrina. There is nothing holier than a Sefer Torah. So you can't buy anything holier. So maybe this is an exception. Shashaper Dami. So if the Sefer Torah is very old and you want to buy a new one, maybe here it is okay. So the Gemara Tashema, what did it say in the Mishnah? If you sold a Sefer Torah, you should not buy Sfarim with it, which is a lower level of Kedusha. So what do I see? Sfarim udalai. Sfarim you're not allowed to buy, but ha-teire b'teire shaper dami. But if you're exchanging teire for teire, which is on the same level, that it seems you are allowed. So the Gemara from the Mishnah there's no raya because masnisin diyevet. The Mishnah is speaking about a case of a person that already sold the sefer teire. Now he has the money, and what is he going to do with the money? So the Mishnah says, don't use something less. But ki kamibayalon, what was our question? Lechatchila. Our question was, you didn't sell it yet. Are you allowed to sell it with this intention to go and buy a better, a nicer sefer teire? So we don't have an answer for that here. Tashema, another ayat says as follows: Gailulin sefer teire b'mitpachis chumoshin. You're allowed to wrap a sefer teire with the mantle, with things that you wrapped chumoshin with it, because you're taking it up a level. Chumashim b'mitpachis neviim b'ksuvim. You can wrap chumashim with something that you wrapped neviim and ksuvim, also going up a level. Aval lo neviim b'ksuvim b'mitpachis chumashim. You can't wrap neviim and ksuvim with what you wrapped chumashim with them, going down a level. V'lo chumashim b'mitpachis sefer teire. And you can't wrap chumashim with what you wrapped a sefer, with a mantle that was covering a sefer teire. Katani miyes. So what do you see over here? Geilim sefer teire b'mitpachis chumashim. So here, this Brais is talking about lechatchila, right? It's not talking about b'diavad, and it's telling you that you could go and wrap a sefer teire with what you wrapped a chumash with, mitpachas chumashin in. So what you see over here is that you can take what you wrapped a chumash, which is a lower level, and use that for sefer teire, go up a level. But mitpachas sefer teire loy. To take a mantle from one sefer teire and use it for a different sefer teire, which are both the same level, that you can't do. You could only use from something that was on a lower level. So similar, we could say regarding selling one sefer teire to buy another sefer teire, should also lechatchila not be allowed. So the Gemara, no, from here there's no raya. But look what it says in the sefer. You can't use for chumashin the mantle of a sefer teire. So what do you see from there? That the problem is because you're going down a level. So if you look at this part of the Braisa, it would seem that the problem is only if you're going down a level. But if it's using a mantle of one sefer teire for another sefer teire, that would be allowed. So therefore, the Gemara says, "Elamaha lekala mishma mina." From this Braisa, you can't prove anything.
You said there's nothing higher than the Sefer Torah.
Correct. Right? Okay, but the Gemara still is not sure about this. Even though there's nothing higher, possibly, I could never use money of one Sefer Torah for another. That's the question here. And the Gemara says, so far, we have no raya. The Gemara tries a third raya, Toshema, manichin Sefer Torah al gabi Torah. You're allowed to place one Sefer Torah on top of another Sefer Torah. The Teire al gabi chumashin. You could put a Teire on top of chumashin. The chumashin al gabi neviim. Chumash could go on neviim and ksuvim. Aval, but not if you have something which has less kedusha. You don't place it on something else. Aval loy neviim uksuvim al gabi chumashin. The neviim and ksuvim that have more that have less kedusha, that is, cannot be placed on the chumash that has more kedusha. V'loy chumashin al gabi Teire, and you can't place chumashim on a Teire. So what do you see over here? That when it comes to placing one thing on another, always the one that has more kedusha goes on something that has less kedusha, and not the other way around. But in the first part of this Braisa, it said that a Sefer Torah could be placed on a Sefer Torah. They're both the same level of kedusha, and they could be placed on one another. So I should say that the same thing applies also to selling. I could sell one Sefer Torah for another Sefer Torah. So the Gemara says, no, you can't compare these. Hanacha kamrit, you're bringing me a raya from storing and putting one on top of the other. That's a different story. Shani hanacha, over there, when it comes to placing one Sefer Torah on top of another, delo yefsha, where there's no other option. Okay, let's look at a Sefer Torah itself, which is wrapped like a scroll, where you have the yiriyas of the Sefer Torah, one on top of the other. The ilay taimachi, if you're not going to say that you could put one Sefer Torah on top of the other, mikrach heichi karchinon. How could you wrap a Sefer Torah in a scroll? Where the scrolls, one layer is on top of the other, so they're on top of each other. One page or one yiri is on top of the other. Since it's not possible, so therefore that's allowed. Hanami over here in the Braisa as well, when it talks about two Sifrei Torah that you're putting one on top of the other, since it's not possible, so it's allowed. There are actually some Rishonim that are not good as these last words over here, because it's mashma and the lashon of the Gemara that this thing that you're allowed to store one Sefer Torah on top of the other is only if you have no other choice, if it's impossible otherwise. But what happens if you have enough space to store a Sefer Torah one near the other, then you're not allowed to put them one on top of the other. Right? So in other words, if you look the way Sefer Torahs are stored in the Aron Kodesh or Bechlal and any other places, they don't store them one on top of the other, you put them near each other. But some Rishonim are not guided this line in the Gemara, Kivin Lo Yav Sheshari, and some Rishonim say, once I see in every single Sefer Torah that you have one Yiri on top of the other, so therefore when it comes to Sefer Torah, this concept of not putting one on top of the other is not applicable. And they allowed it always. In any situation, whether it's possible, whether not, you're always allowed to put one Sefer Torah on top of the other. Point is, there's no raya benegay to selling one Sefer Torah for another. Tashema, Da'amar Rabba Baba Chana Rabbi Yechanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Layim Karadum Sefer Torah Yashan Likach Bechadash. So here he clearly says, do not sell an old Sefer Torah in order to then use the money to buy a new Sefer Torah. So it seems like he says this clearly, that it's not allowed. So the Gemara says, no, it's not a raya from there either. Hasam Mishum Pshiyusak. Over there, it's because we're talking about a situation where the second Sefer Torah has not been written yet. You don't have it yet. And if you're going to sell one, you might then not end up writing the second Sefer Torah. What are we talking about over here? You have the second Sefer Torah that is already written, umanach, and it's lying there. The Sefer has the Sefer Torah done. And lafrukimai. Now you just don't have the money to be able to redeem it or to be able to buy it. And over here, there's no issue of pshia, that there'll be negligence, that you won't write the new Sefer Torah. So over here we have a question whether if it's to both the same level of kedusha, if it's allowed. Tashema, Dom Rabbi Yechanan Mishum Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yechanan said in the name of Rabbi Meir, Ein moichin Sefer Torah. You're never allowed to sell a Sefer Torah unless it's for the following things. Elalul mei Torah, if you need the money to be able to go and learn Torah, and velisa isha, or to get married, to be mekayim the mitzvah of piri v'ribya, to get married. Shmami no. So what I see from here, Torah, bit Torah, shapidami, that you could sell a Sefer Torah in order to be able to learn Torah. So if that's true, when you get to learning, the Gemara assumes it's the same regarding selling one Sefer Torah for another Sefer Torah. So the Gemara says, no, it's not the same thing. Dilme shani limod. Possibly learning is actually different. Shahalimod maybe lidei maisa. When you learn, that actually leads to action, to fulfill what you learn. So learning is actually greater than buying another Sefer Torah. Ishanami, same as also when it comes to getting married, that's also something that's much greater. The world was created not to be desolate, but actually to l'shavis, to settle the world and have children. So therefore, that's a much greater thing. Buying one Torah for the sake of another Torah, that's something that's not allowed. So therefore, the Gemara here actually does not bring a conclusive evidence one way or another regarding this halacha. It's a machlekes in Rishonim how we paskin about this. Sagt the Gemara, Tan Rabbanim v'lot na braise, la yim karadum sefer Torah. You're not allowed to sell a Sefer Torah even if it's an extra Sefer Torah and you don't need it. You're not allowed to sell it. Yes, even if you don't have what to eat. So you sell the Sefer Torah, or you sell your daughter to become a maid, to become a Amma Ivriya, to work for someone. If you do this, the money that you earn from this sale, you won't see any blessing in this money that you earned here. So the Mefarshim actually say, in this situation where you don't have what to eat, it's not totally forbidden. I mean, you don't have what to eat. But nevertheless, when a person sells a Sefer Torah or his daughter in this situation, he still doesn't see a siman bracha forever. It said in the Mishnah, the leftovers of the money. So you sold, let's say, one thing that's holy, a Beis HaKnesses or whatever it was, and now you bought something else that's holier, like you're supposed to do, but you still have leftover money. Even that leftover money, you have to buy something which is holier. Amar Rave, so Rave said about this Mishnah, this is only regarding a case where you sold and it was leftover money. What's if you collected money for a certain purpose, for a certain holy purpose? And now, let's say you collected money to build a shul, and the money was enough to build a shul, and you have leftover money. So what do you do with that money? Mutter, this money is allowed to be used for something that's not on that same level of kedusha. It could be used for something else. So the Gemara, so Abaye asked on this, so it says over here in this Braise, when are you allowed to go ahead and use the money for something else? If, again, let's start that again. When are you not allowed to use the money for something else and you have to use it for that thing, for that kedusha, for something higher level of kedusha? If there was no condition made here. Aval hisnu. But if there was a condition made in advance about this, so then afilu the chsusya mutter. You could even use this money for the chsusya. Let's wait for the Gemara soon. It will explain what the chsusya is, but it's some kind of mundane use. Now, it's not clear what this Braisa is speaking about. It says if you do make a condition, if you don't make a condition, regarding what kind of money are we talking about here? So the Gemara asks, Hey Chidami,
Which money are we talking about?
that right now the Gemara explains, Hey Chidami, what kind of money are we talking about? Are we talking about money of something holy that you sold? And then there was leftovers from this. And now the question is, what do you do with the leftover monies? And here we're saying that it depends if you made a condition about this or not. Says the Gemara, that can't be. Ki hisnu may have it. If you make any condition, how does that change anything? This money was earned from something that's holy, whether you make a condition, whether you're not. That's where the money comes from. So therefore the money has holiness in it. You always have to use it for something holier. So no condition matters here. Elo, so what does this Braisa speak about? Shegavu vayisiru. It's talking about money that was, you fundraised money, you collected money for some holy purpose, and now there's leftover money from this fundraiser. Now the question is, what do you do with this money? And what does this Braisa say? Time the hisnu. Only if you make a condition in advance, that if there'll be leftover money, I should be able to use it for whatever I want, then you're allowed. Haloi hisnu, but if you did not make that condition, loi, then you're not allowed. So this is not like what Rav said. Rav said when you collect money, even if you did not make a condition, you could always use the leftover money for whatever you want. So the Gemara says, La'olam shemachru v'hisiru. Really, going back to this Braisa, the pshat here is that they sold something holy and there was leftover monies from that. Even after they bought something holier, there was still leftover money. We asked the question, if there was leftover money, for sure you have to use it for something holier. And this is what the Braisa means, and this is something that we learned in the previous daf. When do you have to use the money for something holier? If the sale of the holy object that you made was not with all of the leaders of the city and not in the presence of all of the people of the city, they didn't all agree to the sale. But if this was done with the conditions of all the people that were there from the city and the leaders of the city, so then so any money that comes from this sale does not retain its holiness, and you can use it for any mundane purpose, even for something like the chsusya. Here the Gemara explains what the chsusya means. Abaye said to one of the Rabbanon that was teaching the Braisas in front of Rav Sheshes, did you hear from Rav Sheshes my chsusya? What's the meaning of this word chsusya? So he said, this is what Rav Sheshes says, Perasha de Mosa. This is a person that's hired, that's designated to go and ride on a horse to send around any message. It has to be a what?
A courier.
A courier that has to give any message that the leader or the governor or the mayor of the city needs to get out to everybody. So that's this dichsusya. You can use money for this purpose to hire this person. Amar Abaye, now just the Gemara incidentally says that Halkach hide sorbim rabbanon. From here we see that there was this question. They didn't know what the chsusya meant. So whenever you have a young Talmud Chacham, the Shmiele Milse, he heard something, he learned about a certain term, V'layada Pirusha, and he doesn't know what this term means, L'shayle Kamei, D'shchiach Kamei Rabbanon. So he goes and asks a question by the other greater Talmidei Chachamim that always are around greater Talmidei Chachamim that know the answers. Like over here, this one of the Rabbanon that was by Rav Sheshes. So because he was Rav Sheshes, he found out what this means. Someone that knows where to be amongst Talmidei Chachamim, he'll always be around a great person which will be able to give you the right answer to this question. Rabbi Yechanan said, in the name of Rabbi Meir, people of one city went to a different city. So many people together. Upasko aleya and tzedakah. And in that city there was some kind of a fundraiser, some kind of a drive, and everyone is giving money to a certain cause to feed poor people. Naisnin. So they have to participate and also give money for the poor people of the city here. But then when they come back home to their city, they go and take back the money that they gave for this fundraiser, and they bring back the money with them, and they use that money that they already gave for tzedakah, and they give it for the poor people of their city. So Rashi explains, originally they have to give the money. They have to participate with everyone else. Because if they're not going to participate, it's a chashad. It looks like that they're not giving tzedakah at all, that they're not participating at all. So therefore, originally they have to participate. But because they don't belong to this city, they're b'nei ha'ir of another city, so when they leave, they can then take their money with them back to their city. Tanya Nami Hachi, we learned this in the Braisa as well. B'nei Ir Shalchal Ir Acheres. People that went to another city, Pascha Lein Tzedakah, and they had a fundraiser and everyone's giving tzedakah there. Nice, and they have to give as well. Then when they're coming back to their city, they collect back their money and they bring it back to their city. But here, this Braisa adds another detail to this. If it's an individual that went to another city, and everyone's giving tzedakah, and they said that he should give tzedakah, he does have to participate with the fundraiser in that city, and that money that he gives will be given to the poor people of that city. He doesn't take it back home with him to his city. Right? If he's just one person, or actually some Mepharshim say that it's not only one person, it's up to 10 people. If you have 10 people together, that's already a group of people that takes the money back to their city. But if it's 1, 2, 3, if it's any number of people less than that, then the money they give in this city, they have to actually leave it there for the poor people of this city. The Gemara brings an incident. Rav Huna Gaza Tanisa. Rav Huna decreed a fast for whatever reason that he had to decree a fast for this. All legabei Rav Chana bar Chaniloi. Rav Chana bar Chaniloi came there, and v'chol b'nei Masei, and all the people of the city came as well. Ramu alayu tzedakah. So he placed upon them that they should give tzedakah. Right? Many times on a fast day he's supposed to give tzedakah, so he collected from all of them tzedakah. V'yavu, and they all gave tzedakah to Rav Huna, including Rav Chana bar Chaniloi, that was not from this city. Okay, so he came over here, Rav Chana bar Chaniloi, and other people came with him, and they were not from this city, and they all gave him the tzedakah that he collected from them. Now, Kibol and Meisei, when they were coming to leave, they wanted to go back home to their city. Amrulei, they said to Rav Huna, Nice ma, why don't you give us back our money now? And v'nezel v'nefarnes ba ani masin, and we'll use this money to. We're gonna give it for tzedakah, but for the people of our city, like the halacha is. Amalahu. So he answered them. The Tanina we learned there in the Braisa. B'med morim amurim keshe'ein sham chaver ir. So this is another point there about this. That when do you take back your money to bring it to the poor people of your city? If in this city that you came to, there's no Talmud Chacham that's appointed to collect this money for the poor people. Aval yesham chaver ir, but if there is a Talmud Chacham that's in charge of taking care of the people and of all the things that the tzibur needs in that city, tinasin l'chaver ir, so you give it to that Talmud Chacham, and once you give it to him, you leave the money in his hands. And then Rav Huna said, v'kol shekain, and some add over here the word ana, and most definitely over here myself in this situation, da'aniya didi, the poor people of my city, v'didchu, and the poor people of your city as well, alai smichi. They all rely on me. They come to me to get money to eat and so on. So therefore, there's no point of you coming and taking back the money to bring it to the people of your city, because even the people of your city that are poor come to me for money. Sagt Heilige Mishnah, ein moichrin es shal rabim liyachid. You're not allowed to sell a shul that belongs to many, to a rabbim, for a person, for a yachid that wants to have the shul all for himself. Right? Interesting. Imagine a person, he can't get along with anyone in the shul, so he's going to buy the shul all for himself. So you're not allowed to sell the shul from a rabbim to a yachid. Why? You're bringing it down a level from its holiness, from a place where you have many to one. Divrei Rab Meir, this is Rab Meir's opinion. Even though it's still going to be a shul, but that's already considered to be going down a level. Amrullah, so they said, if numbers matter as far as the holiness is concerned, in Cain, afla meir gedayla leir ketana. So to sell a shul from people of a large city that are there in the shul, and there are more people in the shul, to people that from a smaller city, to a smaller crowd that's going to be in the shul, should also be considered a yirida of holiness, and you shouldn't be allowed to do that either. So in other words, the Rabbanan disagree, and they say just like that's allowed, and numbers is not going to make a change in the level of holiness, so from many to one also doesn't matter. The point that the Rabbanan are saying to Rab Meir is a good point. You're going to start counting numbers, so you have to see that it's exactly the same number of people. We don't do that. A shul is a shul, and even if it's one person. Rab Meir will respond, if it's from a large city to a smaller city, so Meikare Kadisha and Hashtanami Kadisha. So before it has the same level of holiness, and now as well, because it's all many. It's more people or less, that doesn't matter. But mirabim liyachid, but when you go from a rabim to a yachid, leke kedusha, it doesn't have the same level of kedusha at all. And Rashi explains what this means, because if you don't have a minyan, so you can't say kaddish, kedusha, and so on. So less than a minyan, and for sure one person, so for sure it doesn't have the same amount of kedusha. Whether it's 20 people, 20, 30 people, and as long as there's a minyan, it's the same level of kedusha. The Rabbanan say, if we're concerned about the various levels of Kedusha that there could be, so then you could never sell a shul in any situation, because that the beauty, the greatness of the king is the more people there are, the more greatness that there is. So the Rabbanan disagree. The Rabbanan say, once you're getting into these details of levels of Kedusha, so you can't say once there's a minyan, there's a minyan. No, there's a difference. If you have a bigger minyan, there's more holiness. So therefore, we don't make that distinction in the level of Kedusha, and you could sell a shul, and therefore you could also sell a shul even to an individual. A basic knesses, a shul, could only be sold, that is, with the following condition. That if the people of the shul that sold it, they will want to take the shul back from this person that bought it for himself. And we're talking here about selling a shul. A person buys a shul for himself. He's going to use it, he's going to live in it, his own house. They can only sell a shul for a person that's going to use it privately if there's a condition that if they decide, and they can take the shul back. Right, so let's say you have a community that is pressed for money for whatever reason, and they sell the shul, and then they get money somehow, and they want to be able to take it back, then they could sell it. Divrei Rab Meir. That's Rab Meir's opinion. The Chachamim say no. You're allowed to sell a shul even if it's a sale without any conditions, and you're selling it forever. And the person can use it for whatever he wants. What? Here, there are certain things that you're not allowed to use a place that was once a shul. Chutz marba dvarim, 4 different things that are very disgraceful things. Lemerchatz, you're going to use it for a bathhouse. Lebursiki, a place that you tan hides of the animals. Letvila, a place for tvila, for a mikveh or for a swimming pool, or lebeis hamayim, which means a place where you launder clothing, or a place where you're going to make urinals there. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with this as well, and he says, you can sell this, and you just sell it to be used as an open courtyard. And then the person that buys this, once he buys it, he can go and use it for whatever he wishes. So basically, Rabbi Yehuda says, in the end, you can buy a shul and use that area for whatever you want. The Gemara starts over here with the opinion of Rab Meir. What did Rab Meir say? You sell a shul with the condition that they can buy it back. Fragt the Gemara, Rab Meir, according to Rab Meir, Heichi dairiba. How could this person that bought the shul live in it? Ha'havile ribis. This could come out to be ribis. Why is this ribis? It's sort of like he's lending money. If he ends up giving back the money that is, and they take back the shul, so it turns out that he lent them money, he got back the money, and besides the money he got back, what else did he get back? He also had the time that he was able to live there. So he got back more than the money that he lent. So that's mamish like ribis. Sagt the Gemara, Rab Yechanan, Rab Meir, B'shittis Rab Yehuda Amra. What Rab Meir said, that this is allowed, follows the opinion of Rab Yehuda. The Amar, Rab Yehuda said, Tzad echad b'ribis mutter. If you lend money in such a way that it's not for sure that it's going to come out to be ribis, there's one option that it may end up being ribis. That's not called ribis. In this situation where you sell the shul and you make a condition that they're able to buy it back, it might not end up into being ribis. They might not ever buy it back. If they end up buying it back, then it's going to turn out being ribis. Any situation where you lend out money that it's only a possibility it'll be ribis, that's not called ribis. And the Gemara brings over here the source for this. The Tanya will learn Braisa. A person was collecting from his friend the loan that he owed him. And what happened? He didn't have money to pay. So what did he do? And he said, you know what, this field, I sell you for this time. In other words, this is what's usually called a mashkin. I give you this field as a collateral, you can use it for this time. So now you're allowed to do that. So the Tanakama of this Braisa says, so if this malve, if this person that you gave him this field, if he's going to be eating the fruits, again, let's start again. If the owner of the field, which is actually the loiva, the one giving the field, if he's the one that's eating the fruits of the field all this time, so then mutter, so then that's allowed. Because in the end, when you're going to pay him, there's no ribis involved over here. You're going to pay him the money, and he had no additional benefit from the field. You were the one, the loiva was the one that was eating from the fruits all this time. But if the person that's receiving, the buyer, so to speak, in this case the buyer is the malva, if the buyer is the one that's eating from the fruits all this time, then asr, then this is not allowed. Because in the end, if you end up paying him, it's ribis. He got his payment plus the fruits of this field that he ate. Rabbi Yehuda says it doesn't matter. Even if the buyer, which is the malva, he's the one that's eating the fruits, it's still allowed. Again, the point is because it's not definite that it's going to end up being ribis. It's possible that it's not going to end up being ribis at all. So anytime it's not for sure going to be ribis, it's not a problem. Rabbi Yehuda said, Maise, there was an incident, Bebaitis ben Zainan. This individual here, that he did this, that he made his field a mecher, he gave it as a collateral because he didn't have what to pay. Al-Pi Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, according to what Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said that this could be done. And in that case, the buyer or the person, the malve that got the field, he was eating the fruits from it, and it was not a problem. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said that it's okay. So Rabbi Yehuda is bringing a raya to his opinion. Amrulai, so they responded to him, the Tanakama, the Rabbanan said, that's not what happened. Misham raya. Now from there you're bringing a proof. No, they did not allow the person that received the field to eat the fruits. It was the meicher that was eating the fruits. The guy that owned the field originally, he was eating the fruits. And the lekeach was not eating the fruits. So the Gemara now explains this machlokes. My benayu, what are they arguing about? Tzad echad beribis ikke benayu. When you have a situation where you're giving money, then it's only one option that it would end up being ribis. That's what they're arguing about. Mar savat tzad echad beribis mutter. Rabbi Yehuda says if it's a situation that it only might end up being ribis, so that's allowed. Mar savat tzad echad beribis aser. The other opinion, the first opinion is that if it could end up being ribis, then it's not allowed. Rav explains this argument here a little bit different. The kulam, everybody agrees, tzad echad beribis aser, that if it's only one option that it could end up being ribis, that it's not going to be allowed. Over here there's a different argument. Ribis al manas lahachzer ikke benayu. A case where you are lending money with ribis, but you make a condition that if it's going to end up being ribis, you'll return me the ribis. Is that allowed or not? Marsava ribis almanas lahachzer mutter. When there's ribis, but it's with the condition that you will return it, so then it's going to be allowed. Right? So what's going to happen over here is, if this person is going to end up getting paid, and he also had extra because he ate the fruits, he'll return it. He'll return the value of those fruits. Okay, so if he returns it, so he says it's allowed. The other opinion says, even if you return the ribis, it's still not allowed. The Mishnah said afterwards, you can sell a shul with no conditions forever. Rav Yehuda Mashmuel said, Mutter la adam la hashtin mayim b'toich daldam shel tefillah. You're allowed to urinate in an area within 4 amas of where you davened. Rav Yosef, so Rav Yosef says, "My kamashmalon." What's the chiddush here? Tanina. We said this in the Mishnah that Rabbi Yehuda said, "Meichrin oisal l'shum chatzer." You can sell a shul just for any courtyard, and then v'lekeach he buys it, and v'lekeach again, that is the one that buys it. Mashayir tziyase. He can do it there, whatever he wants. So you see that even a shul, an area where you daven, you could then use it for anything, even for a place to lahashtin. So the Gemara, and the Gemara continues, Vafila Rabbanon, and even the Rabbanon that disagree, like Hamri Ela Beis HaKnesses, they disagreed regarding a shul, the Kaviyah Kedushase, because this is a place where the Kedusha of a shul, it's not just one person that davened there. It's a place that the holiness was permanent there. So you can't sell it for anything. Avol Dal Dam is like Kviyah Kedushasayu, but if a person had a certain area that he alone davened there, and it's not a place that was permanent in its holiness, there's no issue. If you want to then urinate in an area near that, it's not a problem. So the Gemara doesn't answer this question. Tani Tana Kamed Rav Nachman. There's a Tana that learned in front of Rav Nachman as follows. Hamispalel, person that's davening. So then, when you finish davening, Marchik Dal Damasum Mashtin. You have to distance yourself 4 amas, and then you could urinate. V'hamashkin, that is, and on the other hand, a person that urinates, then Marchik Dal Damis Umispalel. So you have to remove yourself from that area 4 amas, and then you can daven. So the Gemara asks on this statement, Amalei, so he said to him, the fact that if you urinated in one area, so you have to distance yourself from there for ames, so we understand why that is, because it's there on the ground. You can't be near there when you daven. So Tanina, we learned this, if you relieve yourself, how far of the distance you have to go to be allowed to daven, dal ames, you have to be far, 4 ames from that area. But this that he said, that if you daven, and then you have to urinate, so you have to go away 4 ames, lamali, why is that? If you're going to say that this is the halacha, all the pathways in the city of Nerda, there's no area that there wasn't an individual that had to stop and daven somewhere, so you're not allowed to urinate anywhere. You can't, because wherever you go, there was always someone that davens somewhere. So the Gemara, Tani, so we learned, what does this mean? Yisha. It doesn't mean that he has to physically move away from one place to another, but what it means is that he has to wait the amount of time that it takes to go 4 amas. So I could understand a person that relieved himself, so he has to wait as long as it takes to walk 4 amas, mishum nitzaitzis, because there could still be droplets that come out of his body, so he has to wait that amount until he davens. But if you're going to say that over here just is speaking about waiting, and you're telling me that a person that davens, so he has to wait the amount of time that it takes to go 4 amas until he would urinate, lamali, why does he have to wait? Ravashi, so Ravashi says the reason is shekol dal damis tfilasa istura befiv. Because when a person davens, the words of the davening are in his mouth. It's still possible that with his mouth, he's still saying words of davening even after he finished davening. So therefore you should wait a few minutes, or actually a few moments, and only then could he relieve himself. Okay, let's finish off one more Indian over here, Zalfa and Simin. So here there's other Amiraim that argue with this. Shalu Talmidavis Rab Zakkai. Our students have asked Rab Zakkai as follows, how did you live such a long life? So he said to them, I never relieved myself within 4 amas where I davened, even though it's allowed, but he never did so. I never gave a nickname to my friend, and we're not even speaking about an embarrassing nickname, any nickname. And I never was mavatal the mitzvah of making kiddush for Shabbos. And he said, I had an old mother, she once sold a covering of her head, and and she brought me with the money the wine that I needed for the kiddush of the day. And Tani, we learned in the Braisa, when she passed away, she left him hundreds of barrels of wine. She was always preparing wine for kiddush, and she left him all this wine. And when Reb Zakkai passed away, he left for his children 3,000 barrels of wine. Rav Hone have a asar risa. Rav Hone, so he had a belt that was made out of some kind of reed, some kind of a grass. He didn't wear a regular belt. V'koi kamei Rav, and he was standing in front of Rav. Amalei, so Rav noticed this, and he asked him, "My high, why aren't you wearing a regular belt? Why are you wearing this strange belt?" Amalei, so he told him, because lehaveli kiddusha, I did not have money for kiddush, for wine. Umashkanti lemnoi, so I took my belt and I gave it as a mashkin, and I got money for kiddush. Vasai be kiddusha, and I brought with this money for kiddush. Amalei, Rav heard this. He said to him, he benched him. Yehei Rava, it should be the will of Hashem, the teitum bisroi, that you should be covered b'shiroi. That is, you should be covered with silk garments. So when Rabbe, his son, got married, so Rav Hone, inish gutzahave, Rav Hone was this short person, gana apurye, and he was lying on a bed or on a couch. Asya benate v'kalase, and his daughters that arrived there to the wedding, or his daughter-in-laws that arrived to the wedding, they didn't notice him there on the couch. And sholchan, they took off their silk garments, their silk coats that they were wearing, v'shadya minayu, and they threw it over him, minayu alei, and on top of him. The eitum b'shiroi, and the bracha of Rav was fulfilled, and he was covered with these silk garments. That's what happened. Now Shama Rav heard about this, that his bracha was fulfilled, v'ikpid, and he had a kipeda. He was sort of upset at Rav Hona about this. Why? Because he said, my time loy amali ki berachtich, why didn't you respond to me when I benched you, v'chein lamar, that so too the bracha should go on the master. In other words, if you see over here that this was a bracha that was fulfilled, so you should have benched me also, and the bracha would have been fulfilled in me. So this is the source of the minig that people respond and say, v'chein lemar. One more thing, the Gemara here says, Shala Talmidiv Rab Elazar ben Shamua, Bameh arachti yamim, with what were you zeicha to live a long life? Amar lehem, he said to them, Miyameh lo asise kapantaria lebeis haknesses. I never used the shul as a shortcut. And v'loi pasati al roishi al rashi am kodesh. And I didn't walk on the heads of the people, the holy people. This refers to those times when they would sit in the shul, they would actually sit in the floor. They didn't have chairs. They sat in the floor, and when you walk in and everyone's sitting on the floor, it looks like you're walking on their heads. You never did that. And kapi bracha. And I didn't bench birchas kayanim without the bracha that you have to say before that, which is levarach Am Yisrael ba'ahava. That's how he was, Ma'idach Yamim.